Perry, where you from, man?
Sway City, Iowa.
Now, see, I didn't even know that, and that's real talk because I'm always used to you starting at Hennessy, Oklahoma. So,
right.
Say it again for me.
Sway City, Iowa.
Sway City, Iowa. Man, how was it coming up there?
It's a small town located right along the Minnesota border.
So I hear cold when I hear that.
Very cold, very cold. I always ask Ma all the time. I say, "Why don't you move down to Oklahoma?" I mean, she has friends there, but not really family keeping her there. My brother's in Des Moines.
Right.
And, I said, at the very least, you could snowbird down here, because really she'll get snow in like the next couple of weeks probably, and it doesn't stop until January, February.
So, okay. So when is the quote unquote warm season for you guys? How's the summer in?
It gets pretty warm.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. June, July, August is hot.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, it really is the best of both worlds in the sense that there is definite a change of the seasons where I grew up. I mean, you got your fall, the leaves, the cold wind, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. The winter was brutal growing up. And then I couldn't do it now as an adult. I've been too far south for too long.
But got whipped out of shape.
Yeah, exactly. Gotten soft. But
and I always ask people who come from some areas like that one that you described, what from a weather perspective, what would qualify shutting down school for a day? Because it seems like what I've seen, like what we deal with here, that's enough to shut it down. You guys laugh at where you're from.
Right. So exactly. And I've lived in a lot of different states, so this isn't just an Oklahoma thing. But the states that have better weather, quite frankly, or warmer weather longer,
right?
Tend to get, if they get a little ice, if they get a little snow, they're going to shut things down because you're just not used to operating that way. I would say, this is just a ballpark, but it would have to be, a full-on 6 to 8 inch blizzard of snow for school to shut down. They'll plug away quite a bit.
So I'm guessing it didn't close very often during your days coming up.
No, it took a lot. Obviously, power out, things like that would affect it, but it's just what you're used to driving on and things of that nature. Now, I could go home. My stepfather passed away a couple years ago in January. The funeral was in January, and I went back and really was driving like this, white knuckling the whole thing because I just wasn't used to it.
Been too long.
It's ice and snow and the whole nine, but yeah, no doubt, just a hardier stock of people, not better or worse than anybody else. Just where they live, they have to deal with just a lot of extreme weather. You know.
And from a childhood perspective, growing up there, right? How was it, man? Were you an outside kid? Had your hands on a bunch of basketballs and footballs growing up?
Yeah.
What was life like as a child coming up in Sweet Falls, right?
Sway City.
Sway City.
Yep. It's just a small town. It's kind of near. A lot of people have heard of the Great Lakes region of Iowa. It's a big tourist area in the northwest corner.
Sure.
That's basically the area that I grew up in. So when I was a kid, that's where you worked during the summer times and stuff, whether it was at marinas or whatever. That part of the state's really pretty and grows from like 800 to 15,000 in the summer with all the tourists. So just a really cool area. That wasn't where I grew up, but that's similar to that part of the state where I grew up. But to answer your question, it was small town living. I'm 46 years old, so I'm a lot older.
You wear it well, man.
Older than I look and way older than I act. So
okay. Inner child.
I remember the day. Yeah, depending on who you ask.
Depending on who you ask, right?
I'm old school, so I was outside all the time. The minute that you woke up until mom told you to come home, and we were always at the park, always had a basketball in our hand. I always tell kids this story. So when I was a kid, I write left-handed, but I shoot right-handed. So, and one of my sons is that way too. And so I wanted to get better dribbling with my left hand, for example, because it was my offhand, because all my sports was through the right hand. So one summer, to make a long story short, I dribbled everywhere in town with my left hand the whole summer, 3 months straight. Never touched my right hand. So just I always laugh at like the memes and whatnot on social media where people lament the old days or, bring up like the neighborhood ones. Like I grew up in blah, blah, blah. We ate bologna sandwich and drank out of the water hose.
All that.
Those posts.
Oh, yeah, man.
In different neighborhoods and whatnot. Well, I'm all that too. Just outside all the time. There wasn't a lot of video game options when I was a kid. When Nintendo and Atari were just kind of kicking off when I was a kid.
Just bubbling.
Yes. So like Tecmo Bowl and things like that, those were real popular. I wasn't ever any good at video games.
I got you. Similar to me too. I retired from the video game era a little bit sooner. You know what I mean? I tapped out real quick, like Andrew Luck. You know what I mean? I got on that pretty quick, man. You know what I'm saying? And you know what was really wild, and we're gonna circle back to that. But you said something that kind of set something off in my mind, because when people talk about the old days or anything like that, or things like that, it seems like some people, not all, I won't even say most, but some people act as though like some of the things that we went through in years past, like none of them can translate into today. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think some of the stuff can stay where it was, you know, it's a different time. But other things from a foundation standpoint can definitely translate, you know, like pride in where you come from, taking ownership and being held accountable for what you do or don't do. And those lessons can be taught through the work that you and I both do in coaching. But to that, you'd say what?
I would agree 100% with what you're saying. I think a lot of things translate, you know, whether it's friendship and peace and kindness and, you know, basically the moral cornerstones we all try to teach our children, whether they're our children biologically or our children in our basketball family or whatever it may be, absolutely translate and are not being taught enough. Our schools have changed immensely. You know, our school cultures have changed immensely. It doesn't whether you're a kid that's walking the streets of Brooklyn, heading to your PS 108, you know, a junior high out there or something, or whether you're talking about a small town in Oklahoma, the school cultures have changed. Society's changed a little bit, but the kids haven't changed. That's the one thing I won't listen to anybody talk about. The kids have not changed. The adults have changed.
Yes.
The adults have changed quite a bit, right, wrong, or indifferent. But the kids haven't changed. The level of accountability that we hold them to has changed, and I find that too in some of the things, you know, even in my parenting skills with my own children. You know, there'll be times where I catch myself where I'll say like a 2019 thing when I meant to say a 1984 thing. You know, as far as whatever the situation may be.
Do you correct yourself pretty immediately
yeah,
after?
You know, I think you do, because of the way the rest of their day is, the 8 hours I'm not with them. You do have to taper that a little bit. You do have to maybe think a little bit more about what you're saying before you say it. As before, you know, my father is a great man, but he would just say what he had to say and not think twice about it. I think we do have to think a little bit because of today's world. But at the end of the day, they're your kids. They're your responsibility. How they're going to come up is ultimately up to you.
Sure.
And all that stuff translates, whether it's the 50s, 60s, all the way to now, I think.
And here's something else that's sort of different. I think in the past, the messenger didn't necessarily matter. If it was an adult and you were given some instructions, there was a certain level of respect that you addressed them with, and you know, a way by which you acted. But nowadays, at least maybe this is just my experience that I'm speaking from, if this kid doesn't know you or they don't have any ties to you at all, then not anybody, whether you're grown or not, can say anything to them without some sort of rebuttal. And I'm like, and that's that. If I had to pick a difference in kids then versus kids now, I'd say it's that. And that kind of circles back to the relationship point that I made earlier, that I think it's important. And I don't think we want to create robots either. They should know why we're asking them to do what we want them to do. But there is a time, and you know, as a parent, to where, hey, no explanation needed. I told you to do this. I need it done. You know what I mean?
No doubt. The critical thinking, the free thinking is all important, because at the end of the day, you want your kids to become their own person.
Absolutely.
And they've got to be able to solve their own issues. And they need to learn how to socialize, and they need to learn how to interact. With the advent of social media and technology in general, even as adults, we don't do enough face-to-face anymore.
Oh, man, we don't.
And so I think ultimately that's a trickle-down effect to our kids. They, in turn, don't know how to problem solve as well. Conflict resolution is a big one that is kind of becoming a lost art a little bit. I'd rather be a keyboard commando and talk a whole bunch of smack on social media than actually deal with the situation. The sub-tweets, the sub-posts.
The sub-everything. Then I see you in public.
Some people need to, or this person, you know, and we know, if you know the person at all, we know who you're talking about. So either just say their name or don't say their name. But that's my opinion on social media as well.
True.
But what you were saying is without a doubt. Respect is taught at home. Respect must be earned, not given.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I could not agree more. That hard and fast truth is, if you respect your elders, period.
Just got to, man.
If they, as long as they're not talking crazy to you and they ask you or tell you to do something, you need to do it.
Yeah. And we've all been given some tough pills to swallow. It's like medicine.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just because we don't like it doesn't always mean that it's wrong.
Right. Well, when we've all taken a chewing from friends' moms,
Village.
relatives,
Mm-hmm.
even strangers on the street. If you were acting the fool and some random person said something to you, you kind of checked yourself. I found with kids these days, especially like during our events and whatnot, and for the most part, and this is not me saying this because I want you to keep coming back, this is fairly true. Across the board, kids are pretty good, but if they're acting up or whatever, if you raise your voice, it'll automatically get their attention. There's not a lot of yelling going on these days.
Sure.
And I think there's a fine line between that. I know people that scream at their kids 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's too much. I know people that don't scream at their kids at all. And again, I'm not telling anybody how to parent. Let the record show.
Let the record show.
I'm not a better parent than you. You
know
what I mean?
Daddy Perry over here.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's definitely a happy medium, and there needs to be some healthy fear. It's part of the respect,
For sure.
and not fear strangers, but just understand that the person that you're dealing with has been where you were at.
Absolutely.
And as long as they're not talking crazy to you, or as a child, talking crazy to me if I'm a kid, then I need to respect what they're saying.
I think that's a message that should and definitely could resonate out there if we got anybody listening trying to get it figured out.
We do. Listen.
Yeah. And we don't have it figured out, but not all anyway. But
Right.
most of it, I'd say you do. You've been around the block a time or two.
Well, I'm old. Remember we talked about that.
I'm going to say seasoned. I'll let you say old.
I like a fine wine.
Yeah, man. It gets better with time. Now we got to talk about your athletic background. When did you first start playing organized sports? You talked about some sandlot days.
I played everything.
You played everything?
Small town, you had to.
I hear that a lot, man.
So, I had a healthy amount of boys in my class. Graduated with about 50.
Okay.
Now, my high school doesn't exist anymore. And when I say that, I mean in the town I grew up in, the high school is still there, but it's used as a different facility.
Okay, so they didn't tear it down.
No, they didn't. When I was a kid, about 3 communities made up my school district.
All right.
Now, there's about 7 that make up the same school district. They renamed it, and it's smaller than where I grew up. So that part of Iowa is really, really diminished as far as, the amount of people that live there just in general. And
Man.
so, but played everything. Golf, track, football until I was shot, which is another story. And then basketball, of course. But
was basketball always the favorite, or did?
Oh yeah. My dad, big basketball player, very motivated man. Very.
I like that choice of words right there.
He pushed us to be the best players that we could be, and basketball it still is really important to him. He was a high school coach before. When I was like in elementary school through early junior high, he was a coach, football, basketball. And then he left teaching to sell insurance full time. And then he became a high school coach later on in his life. And he coached for about another 7 or 8, 9 years. And now he's retired now. So basketball's always been really important to him.
And you say us. How many did you grow up with, man? How many were you on?
My brother and I.
Oh, just you and your brother? Who's the oldest, man?
Myself.
Okay, now
by
who's the best?
7 years.
Who's the better one of the two?
In what?
In basketball.
In life?
Hey, that came out of your mouth. Okay, I don't.
My brother was a very successful basketball player.
Was he? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
He averaged right around 30 a game as a senior. And I actually recruited him at the time. Let's see. At the time, I was at an NAI in Leavenworth, Kansas, coaching and recruited him. He needs some work academically, so he went the JUCO 4-year route.
For sure.
But yeah, he was a tough kid, tough player. Been a nice NAI, possibly D2 kid.
There you go.
But he had a real good career. And I was all right.
There you go.
I enjoyed it, had fun with it, always knew I wanted to be a coach.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
I wonder when you got that call.
Yeah, I didn't really know. I never really thought about doing anything else other than going into the Air Force. My uncle, my namesake, was shot down and killed. I shouldn't say shot down. His plane was sabotaged and exploded in Vietnam. So he was killed in Vietnam as a pilot. And so the Air Force our country, our country's protection has always been big in my heart. I try to live up to his standard. Never met him. He was killed in 72. I was born in 73. And was actually stationed at Vance up in Enid for a minute and got his undergraduate degree from OSU. So there's a tie to Oklahoma there.
There you go.
Before he went over to Vietnam. And so those things, other than coaching, I only really thought about the military. But again, going back to the accident, I was in a hunting accident December 4th, 1988. I was shot by a friend of mine with a 12 gauge, and it blew off the end of my elbow. So I don't have an elbow here.
I've never noticed. So see, now you're gonna have me looking at your elbow.
I know,
with
it's
the sideways.
strange. I mean, it's so you can see now. There's no tit.
I can definitely see that.
So it's a strange accident, but
Yeah.
based on that, it was a shotgun. It could have gone a lot worse because essentially we were in close quarters and it didn't give a chance for the pattern to spread.
Mhm.
Had it had a chance, it would probably hit the back of my head. Probably would have killed me.
Yeah, we'd have had different problems. We may
Right.
not be having a conversation
So,
right now.
and then and in a testament to perseverance, kids, I was back on the court in 6 weeks shooting left-handed. Now I write left-handed, so I got a little bit of an advantage.
Right.
But you know, it was everything to get back out there. That changed the trajectory of my life. That was a life-changing event.
I
I don't know
got to date myself on that too, because I was 10 days before I was born.
You were born December 14th, 1988? Ah, God, that's
me,
wild.
man.
30 years ago. Was it 30 years ago? Are you 30 or 31?
I'm 30. I'll be 31 this coming December.
Okay, so it was 30 years ago this
Yeah.
year that I was shot.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Now I got to ask you about this friend. How are y'all today, man?
Well, like any other high school friend, you know, you guys are young enough where you still stay close with your high school friends
True,
or
true.
live with them or whatever.
Right. But life.
Right. He's in Des Moines, Facebook. You know,
Got
I
you.
know what's going on with his life.
Got you.
That kid, his name's Andy, and he caught a lot of flack. You
Did
can
he?
imagine the flack he
Oh,
caught.
man.
I remember that first Christmas, true story. I was in the hospital, obviously, but
Mhm.
of course my friends that came and visited, or Ma told me or somebody. But anyway, they used to have Santa Claus would come out at my high school,
Sure.
and he would give out gag gifts. Well, that my buddy Andy got a Target with my picture glued in the middle of it,
man.
and he turned around, flipped the entire crowd
Absolutely.
off,
Absolutely. he did.
got suspended for a day for using the middle finger, and so that kid took quite a beating.
He took a
for
little
it.
bit,
Yeah,
a little bit of
yeah,
a beating.
yeah.
But it was an
It was
accident,
an
like you
accident, and yeah, I'm sure. I'm not saying there's not a day that goes by he doesn't think about it, but I'm sure it changed his life too. You know, the thought of possibly taking away somebody's life.
Yeah.
You know, and he was right there with me in the aftermath of the shooting, and I helped him. He actually went, bless his heart, he killed me if I said it. He actually went into shock pretty bad. I was in shock, but in shock in the sense that I was aware of my surroundings. He lost it.
Man.
So I had to help him up to, thankfully we were on a farm with a farmhouse, and helped him, you know, helped each other, helped him up to the house so we called 911. But yeah, I'm sure it scarred him pretty good too, seeing that, you know, because I don't know how many gunshots you've seen in person. But
Me personally, zero.
Okay, good, because it's an ugly mess. I mean, there's, you know, it's damage. It's severe damage to your skin and bones, and he saw it firsthand. So I'm sure it impacted him negatively as well.
Life's lessons, man. You know,
It's
we
wild.
live and we learn.
We go through hunter safety and all that jazz, but it just takes an instant, which I think is a good message because a lot of Oklahoma kids hunt. You know, and I'm no expert on hunter safety. I never picked up a gun again.
Sure.
But man, just be careful, man, before you pull that trigger. That's all I gotta say about that.
That's for sure, man.
Especially when you guys are either going over a fence or you're in between. We were in between two silos. We were in between two structures on the farm that helped feed or grain or whatever.
Sure.
So our proximity was pretty close.
Eesh.
And he just wasn't paying attention because we were 16 years old.
Yeah, and that's 16 of you.
Mm-hmm.
Very 16 of you.
us. Very 16.
But what's impressive is you got yourself back. I'm pretty sure you were going against some orders, getting back out on the court so prematurely. But
yeah, because the issue was I don't have a lot of bone, obviously protecting the joint. So
Right.
even to this day, if I fall and break it, I'll have to get it fused, and I'll have to make a decision whether I want to reach up high or reach my mouth. And all these years I've avoided, and I've fallen on ice and everything.
Oof.
And just, just really been fortunate and not ever broken it, because
And it's that natural instinct to put that hand, put
yeah,
that arm down there and try to break your fall.
yeah, absolutely. Or if you fall and land, backwards and land on the actual joint itself, it'll mess me up. But I still have pain. Still have, I still have BBs in here from the shot. There's one right there. You can see a little black mark right there.
Yeah, I definitely see. You got some battle wounds, man.
Yeah, well, I had to work its way. So it's taken 30 years to work its way to the surface.
That's incredible.
Isn't that crazy? Like the ones they could cut out, they cut out, but some of them were buried so deep they had to work their way back to the skin.
I think it's safe to say you'll be dealing with that for the rest of your days in some capacity.
Yeah, it's part of the journey, right? My journey. For me to ignore that fact that it happened would be, not living up to my experience is what turned me into what I am today, because it was a big deal. For me, it was a big deal.
Got to live your truth. Now, take me to your college experience. What was life after high school? Did you go to school immediately?
I did.
Did you take time being an adult first? Oh, you went straight to school. Okay.
I went straight to school. I was not the best student, but I went straight to school and
where'd you go?
At Reinforced. I went to the University of Iowa.
Okay.
And then I finished at Kansas State.
All right.
And so what I took from college is reinforced that I want to be a coach even more.
Really?
And so I actively looked for any coaching job that I could get. And my first coaching job, because the coaching end of it really overplays the playing part of it. People want to hear about the playing part of it, but really the impact that I'd like to think that I've helped with on kids has been all through coaching. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, I've coached for 25 years. Yeah. And so it's taken over, the playing component of it. I was an AAU coach right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. Youth basketball right out of the gate.
Now, how did you configure your team? Were these young men, or the young boys or girls?
Boys.
Okay, were the boys pretty much there for you already as a team, or did you have to go out and get these guys and make your team?
The 17U and the 16U were pretty intact, and then I had a good hand in the 15U. We didn't have anybody younger than high school ages.
Right.
And we practiced at this little rec center in downtown Iowa City. And, that Iowa City is a decent-sized Iowa town. It's probably about 85,000 people, and that's not including campus. Mm-hmm. And so there's quite a talent pool to pull from. There's 3 high schools there: Iowa City High, Iowa City West, Regina, and then you got some suburb schools too as well. And so there was quite a few kids to pull from. So you could, if you worked at it in Iowa City, you could really have a pretty good AAU team. Nice population of African-American folks in Iowa City, so you can get some size and some athleticism that maybe you wouldn't find out of other kids. And so there's a nice mix of kids in Iowa City to pull from. And so that was a real enjoyable experience. The first year I coached with them, we got 7th in the country at AAU Nationals down in Orlando. So to experience success right out of the gate was pretty darn cool. I didn't really know what I was doing.
How old were you?
21 or 22, probably.
21 or 22. What? Let me ask you this: was it rough or was it easy communicating with those kids? Because I'm guessing the youngest ones that you had were 14, getting ready to be 15. So you're not even a decade older than your youngest. And I know that can be rough from an authoritative standpoint. How was that transitioning?
And most of my early career was like that. When I got my first college job, I would have been 23, and so were the seniors.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So
tricky.
Yeah. Now, the thing about that, when you're young, you don't date any co-eds. You don't drink beer with your players. You just got to have that separation, and then everything else will kind of fall in line. But yeah, there's no doubt the message. You need to practice what you preach when you're that age and you're coaching kids that aren't that far off from your grade. Your age, for example. So if you live decently and they see that, and you live how you say and do the things that you say and mean it and live by it, then the message will be heard. If you're still acting like a kid, and not that I was the most mature 22-year-old, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that.
I don't know many
I
of
did
them
a
that are
whole
old
bunch of dumb stuff when I was a kid, but
that's the age.
Yeah, but as long as you kind of not draw that line in the sand, but I think it's important that kids know real.
They do, man.
Kids will see right through you.
Yeah, they got the BS detectors.
And so, as long as you're trying to do right by them and say the right things and mean it and live it, the message will be heard. But yeah, there was some times where, like, I remember when I first got my first Division II job.
Which was?
That was at the College of St. Rose in Albany, New York.
Okay, in the capital.
Yep, in the capital region. Yep, upstate, cold. Talk about cold,
yeah,
bro.
Man. Was that on a different level than even where you grew
up? A little
up?
bit, yeah.
Sway City?
When I flew in, I flew in for my interview in June, right? Took the job. I was there by July. Interviewed in June. When I landed on the tarmac, we're coming in. I look over. We're rolling towards the terminal. I look over to my left, and there's about 16 feet of snow piled up at the end of one of the runways.
Piled up. Like
still there from the winter.
Oh, my
Hadn't melted off yet.
And this is June. That is incredible, man.
Yeah.
Dang, man. I would say
May, but no earlier than that.
Okay.
It still was warm.
That's discouraging.
Or should have been warm.
Man, look at. Okay, well, how did it actually
feel outside? And it snowed Halloween that first year. I'll never forget.
That's believable, though.
Yeah, it snowed Halloween.
And I've never been up on the East Coast, really. So all of this you're saying is fascinating to me. But, Halloween is right in the thick of the fall. So I can kind of see the snowing getting started pretty early.
It was a little early because I had moved from Kansas City. So it was a little early to me. But having grown up in Iowa, I was like back at it. And then most of my career, so my college career went from New York to Kansas, Kansas to New York, New York to Kansas. So I only coached in 2 different states at the collegiate level. I coached high school in Iowa. After the AU, I became an assistant at City High, one of the Iowa City schools I mentioned, and then went on to become a college coach for the next 14 years. And then I coached at a high school in Kansas. But I just moved back and forth. So I spent, I don't know, not quite half my coaching career on the East Coast, between moving back and forth. So my last job was JUCO outside the Bronx. I was the head coach.
Oh, now I can't wait to talk about JUCO. But I got to ask you this. From high school to the college level period, outside of, I guess, anything physical, is there a noticeable difference between the work that's necessary at one level versus the work that's necessary at another level? And let me sort of elaborate on that. In high school, at the high school level, whether it's AAU or if it's in the school system, you're having to wear so many different hats for these young men and young women, right? Whether you're the probation officer, you're like their academic advisor, their taxi to some degree. Does that go up a notch or does that subside a little bit? Parent figure. Yeah. Does that subside at all at the college level or is it amplified?
I don't think the workload is that much different. I mean, I know a lot. Like the guy who runs my events in Iowa, he's a high school coach in a socioeconomic neighborhood that's not normal to Iowa, I would say. And so he does all the things that you're talking about.
Right.
There's a lot of college coaches that don't operate that way, don't have to operate that way. So I don't think it's fair to say that it's tougher at the college level than the high school. And I don't think it's fair to say it's tougher at the high school level than the college level because every situation is different.
Sort of case by case.
Right. If you've got a college job that you took that you ended up not being a very good job, then your workload's quite different, than say Coach Krzyzewski, who's earned everything he's got. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But everything's different, just like my guy in Des Moines that has to haul kids around and be dad and things of that nature, feed them and things of that nature. Right. Doesn't have the same thing that maybe, Coach Schofield runs into or you ran into in Piedmont. It's just different situations.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think that if you show you care, that goes a long ways, and that doesn't have anything to do with any level.
Sure.
At JUCO, am I going to sweep the floors and do the laundry? Yeah. At Division II, am I in charge of study halls and whatnot, study tables, things of that nature? Yeah. I mean, everything's got its own little quirk to it. The thing about coaching that I always vibed with as a college coach, there's 2 reasons I jumped into college right away. One, I didn't have the maturity to deal with the parents at the high school level when I was that age. And so I was like, you know what, I just want to go recruit kids. That was one. And then the other thing was, I felt like I wanted to kind of see the world. I wanted that coaching lifestyle. And
around.
I also struggle in 9-to-5 situations.
I got you.
Not that I can't handle it. I mean, I worked for the post office for 5 years. I mean, that's the government.
Yeah, I remember that. I used to have to come over there and see you every time I was picking up some mail.
I can fit into that mold, work for the government, everything in triplicate. This is your time you work. You get paid for the minute you're there, and the minute you leave, you're done getting paid. I can fit into that mold. I'll do what it takes to survive, but I thrive in a looser atmosphere, meaning I'll work at 3. I'll still work at 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, I'll still do Sons of Ireland or Oklahoma Irish or H-Town Hoops Academy. No, those are all shameless plugs.
I like how you did that, man. That's how I know you've been around the block a time or two. Just make it. It's like a commercial. Get them on.
I was waiting for you to say something. That I'll just call myself out.
Hey, I'm not gonna block the blessings, man.
But I'll still operate on weird hours, and that's just who I am. I'm 46. I'm not changing anytime soon. So the freedom of the college level was something I was really attracted to. So.
Man, now you mentioned your AAU bout, right? Mm-hmm. And you've also mentioned Sons of Ireland, which is the organization that you run, correct?
I own it. Yeah.
Now, here's what I want to talk about when it comes to players and recruiting and things of that sort. People always say it's business, right? And and I think a lot of people hide behind that phrase, and it sort of excuses them from doing some faulty things behind the scene. And what I'm really gearing up to ask you is, have you ever had a bout with a particular kid, right, that you've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of effort into, and they are starting to reap the benefits of their labor, so to speak, and then here comes another organization who may be a little further along than yours, or maybe more resources or more money, whatever, and they poach that kid, and that kid leaves, and he moves on, and he's going and playing with them. Now, I know that's the business of it. That may be the ugly side of it, but I have a hard time believing that you don't feel some sort of way on a personal level about that kind of thing. Like, how do you handle such a thing?
Well, I think that you have to have perspective on everything. I don't know if people believe me when I say this or not, or whether I put it on social media or not, but I truly want kids playing basketball. I really do. I don't care whether you play for us, play in our events, don't play in our events, because we're of the unique, and it's not like we're the only one in Oklahoma City, but we're of the unique situation where we've got the business side, the leagues, the tournaments, so on and so forth, and then we've got the team side. So both are very rewarding.
Sure.
Not financially, but very rewarding. But they both have their own set of rules, so to speak, unspoken rules, unwritten rules, like baseball or whatever you want to call it. But of course, to answer your question, absolutely, of course. If you and I was thinking from a program director's standpoint, my day-to-day with the kids isn't quite as much as my coaching staff is.
Sure.
But I still get to know all the kids, still, get to know their parents and whatnot. And yeah, it hurts. There's no doubt. But at the end of the day, I got to think as long as we do things the right way, there's a shot that kid will come back.
Sure. And
I try to keep that glass half full. I see a lot of people get very upset when a kid leaves your program, and I get that. I do. We're all ultra competitive, or we would not be in this business.
That's a fact.
Period. Now, whether your ultra competitiveness translates in your actions, where it is the number one end all be all, or if it's kind of number 3 on the list or number 2 on the list, that's where people's true colors come out. How they react to certain situations, you can tell how they prioritize things. Win at all costs, guy's going to be like, he's going to go on Facebook and be like, you know what, that kid wasn't any good anyways.
Yeah. And I think that,
and for anyone, and I can't stress this enough, Coach, for anyone to talk negatively about a child under the age of 18, blows my mind. It blows my mind.
It's a kid.
Absolutely. It's a kid. And that kid, he can act a fool, right? And I can look at him and say, that's not right, or I can't believe that kid did that. Yeah. But in my head, I'm going, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
You know,
And we've all
and
been
so
young once.
I think that's where it comes from. You know, a lot of people, and this is going to sound like I'm talking trash, but I'm not. Okay, let the record show.
Bet.
The people that get the most excited, the people that get the most upset. I'm not saying they didn't play the game. I'm saying they maybe didn't have the most success they would have liked when they look back.
Right.
And so they quite literally live vicariously through the kids they coach or their own children.
Right.
And that is a filter. That's a glasses, you know, set of glasses. That's how they view their world. You know, everything that happens along the way, you know, changes the way we think and how we see things and how we perceive things. And I think oftentimes the ones that get the most upset are the ones that have just everything into it because of what happened or didn't happen when they were younger themselves.
I think
Personal
that's really
opinion.
sad. No, I think you're onto something. Obviously, every case is a little different, but I've seen some of those cases before.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think was the most, is the most tragic about that whole breakdown is that a lot of times, whoever that kid is usually pretty good. They
Right.
end up having enough of it.
Right.
They get burnt out. And
Mm-hmm.
so, who knows, that kid may have been able to take it leaps and bounds further than where they were, but they were like, you know what? I think I'm gonna do something that I want to do for once.
Right.
And usually I have a good friend of mine who went through that, and his dad, it took a minute for him to come to peace with the fact that
It does.
it's not your decision anymore,
Right.
Dad.
It does. And it's, you know, and especially as our kids get older, you
Yeah.
talk about from a parenting standpoint or even a coaching standpoint, you know, they're going to make decisions that we don't necessarily agree with. We'll
Sure.
love them through it, you know, or we should love them through it. I think also, too, getting back to your point, I think that, you know, we're a program that's never going to be a sneaker program. We're never going to have Adidas and Nike sending us money or anything like that. That's our lot in life, and that's fine. What I stress to our coaching staff is we're going to love kids where they're at. We're going to coach them where they're at. We're going to take them as far as they want to go with it. Ultimately, their work ethic and their desire will dictate what level or wherever they end up with basketball. If you look at it from that standpoint and say, okay, I helped Junior. I helped him. He was good when we got him. I like to think I helped him get better. And that's enough for me.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not ego talking. I'm not trying to downplay my own ego or whatever.
Gotcha.
I really feel, and maybe it's just being middle-aged, bro. I mean, you know, you
got perspective now, though.
You try. And I think that is, you know, if someone were to call me today and say our best 8th grader left the program, if anybody leaves our program, they'll call me and say, hey, I live in Midwest City. The drive to practice is a pain. Or someone will call me and say, I can't quite afford the fee, you know, which we can work on that.
Yeah, we can modify.
You know, not just for the really good players. I'll work with anybody, you know, financially, because I have 4 kids. I know what it's like.
Especially when they want to be here.
Exactly.
And you usually know the ones who do
Exactly.
and don't.
And that's the other thing. And that's a great point you bring up. You don't want the kid here that doesn't want to be here, or the parents that don't want to be here, you know, because it's going to be nothing but problems. And so that's typically why people leave us. I'm not saying people don't get mad at me or get mad at our coaches. I mean, that's life. We've got, you know, this summer we had 80, 90, 100 kids in our program. And so, you know, there's always going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as long as the idea and the issue or not the issue, rather the idea, the thought of treating people with respect, treating people the way they're treating you. I mean, again, it goes back to the golden rule. I mean,
treat others the way you want.
I'll get like a phone call and why are you doing this? What are you doing? Da 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 da. And it's like, you don't pay my bills.
You don't.
You know, you don't. And so until you do, I appreciate what you're saying, but you want to be nice.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to be disrespectful.
But you want them to get it.
Right. And so, you know, it's always a fine line. And then just youth sports in general is its own animal.
Mm-hmm.
And youth sports in general has changed over the years. You know, whether it's from the adults that are coaching or the adults in the stands or whatever, but it's almost always the adults.
Have you ever had a kid who you liked? And they may have even been a good player, but more importantly, you liked the kid.
Mm-hmm.
But his or her parents were so extra or so high maintenance, or it made it hard to like them, to where it almost did something to the relationship between you and the kid. Have you ever had a situation like that?
I've had it
How do you deal with that?
several times over the years, but yeah, I've always tried to hug on the kid more.
There you go.
Because if I'm dealing with that, just a little taste of it, that kid's home life. I'm not saying the kid's having a bad home life. I'm not saying anything wild like that. I'm saying that the words that are being said to me or emailed to me or whatever it may be, don't tell me they shut that off when they go home.
No, yeah.
They're not talking to me. They're not talking to their kid the way they're talking to me, but they're talking to their kid in a certain way. And that kid has nowhere to go except listen to it.
Yeah.
And so, listen, bro, I'm Irish, so I get hot-headed. Listen, I'll get my Irish up and I'll get upset and everything else. And I'll rant and rave to my wife and my kids or whatever the situation might be. But at the end of the day, I'll calm down and I'll love on that kid more because I think,
a lot of times the kid is doing the best that they can do under the circumstances.
No doubt. The kid don't know any better.
Don't know anything yet. And like you said, where's he gonna go? You know
Nowhere.
He lives with mom and dad.
He's living it. So. He's living it. And they might be great parents.
They might be.
But that somewhere along the way, if they're constantly being extra, as you put it, which I think is a great way to put it, that stuff's spilling over into home. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. At home where you feel comfortable, you're really going to say what you feel at home.
Yeah, that's your safe place.
And so
no monitors, no none of that.
Yeah, I had a parent. This is just a harmless story. I had a parent yesterday talk about how their kid, was 9 years old and practicing football 3 times a week, which is a lot for a 9-year-old. And I agree. But the dad walked out of the gym. The kid walks in. I start warming him up, and he's 9, so it's a different kind of workout anyway.
Absolutely.
So we keep it loose. We play, 21 or whatever to break it up just to keep him interested. But
there you go.
He walks into the gym. First thing he says, he sets down his stuff, and he says, "Tim, I think practicing 3 times a week for 9-year-old football is too much."
This is what the kid said.
Right.
Wow.
10 minutes after his dad said it to me. And so they pick up, man. They're sponges. They're gonna repeat and repeat everything that we say.
Man.
Period. It doesn't matter if you don't have your own children. If you're around children, they're going to repeat what you say, how you feel. If you yell at the refs, they'll yell at the refs. You talk crazy to people, they'll talk crazy to people.
That's right.
Disrespectful, they'll be disrespectful.
It's a trip what they're paying attention to too, because I've run into that dynamic, and I'm sure you have too as a coach. I'll either have a student in class because I teach, or I have one of my players who may be real reserved, doesn't say much, and I'm looking and I'm kind of like, because I think as coaches we innately want to try and reach every single one, even if it's not even possible. It's
no
like,
doubt.
I wonder about this one right here. Is he or is she learning anything? Are they interested at all? And then out of the blue, you'll hear him recite something to you that you said. I'm like, oh, so something stuck.
And
so I know that's true.
And they'll use it correctly.
Yes, sir.
And that's a sign of respect towards you that they're listening to you.
For sure. It's gratifying too, man.
The worst thing ever, just kind of touching on your point, and we've all dealt with it, is a former player that's incarcerated or a former player that's killed on the streets. That is the worst feeling on earth.
It's bad, man.
And to reach them, you're not gonna reach all of them. And as an educator, I was a substitute teacher, and so it's not like I've never been in a school. When I was a high school coach, I taught homeroom and things like that. Security 1 year.
There you go.
But
they had the right guy for that one, didn't they?
Well,
you rolled them up if you need to. Loud voice, project.
Loud voice, yeah.
I feel it.
But with being an educator in today's society, you're really not going to reach them all in the classroom, unfortunately. You know that.
Sure.
And that's sad. And I bet that weighs on teachers at night, especially if the kid's not a complete creep.
Sure.
If the kid just doesn't care or whatever it may be, but doesn't cause a lot of problems, you really feel for that kid. And school culture is different. I mean, my God, the safety issues and the looking over your shoulder for strangers and, the metal detectors and the locked doors and the push buttons to get in. And it doesn't matter if you're white, black, or green. Yeah. Everybody's going through it in the schools right now. And so I say a prayer all the time for you guys as educators. My cousin's a teacher. And so that I go military education in my book.
There you go.
Military should be paid $1 million a year if we could afford it. Teachers should be paid $1 million a year if we could afford it. That's just straight finances. But from a respect standpoint, I always go military educators.
For sure, man. For sure. And we all are responsible in some capacity for what this kid does or doesn't do, how they turn out. But I do believe we're planting seeds. And, you know, talking about it, whether it's in academia or if it's on the basketball court, it's like, man, we're planting these seeds, but we really, as competitors, we want that seed to grow and manifest while we're still working together.
Right.
But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, once they move on to the next chapter, then that light bulb may go off in their head. So my goal, whether it's short term or long term, is to do something or say something that they will remember. Something positive.
No doubt.
You know what I mean? Because they got a lot of teachers going and seeing them every day. A lot of people they come in contact with every day. Coaches, same thing. But if you can remember me through something I said or did, okay, cool. All right.
Well, and the thing about it is, and you've coached and taught long enough, I think I remember seeing a post like, it's probably been a year ago maybe, where a girl from Muskogee had said something to you and you had posted it. That's the payoff right there.
It is. Yeah.
And you've coached and taught long enough that you're getting kids that are getting older, starting to have their families.
Sure.
And when you're an educator, you start getting 30 years old. That's when you start having people come back to you.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely.
You're not quite at teaching the kid of the kid that you taught.
Not yet. I got a couple more blocks to turn.
You'll get down there, and but yeah, that I just former players, and you always wonder, like, I do anyway. Should I post it? Should I not post it?
Right.
Is it conceited to post it? Shouldn't it be enough that kid reached out?
Right.
But it is validating.
It is.
It's validating. And I think we all need a reason. We all need a why.
Mm-hmm.
If you went 10 years coaching and you didn't impact anybody,
that's probably
that's on you.
And I've seen coaches who I didn't necessarily think much of in terms of their knowledge of the game still be effective in another department.
Absolutely, because we all have our strengths.
Right. And when you talked about the why, sometimes we can lose sight of why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And so, reaffirmations or reassurances or just reminders in general, those things help, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we males, we can have sort of a fragile ego every now and again. You know what I mean? I know I can admit to that. So every now and then I need somebody to tell me, hey, you're doing all right.
No doubt. Well, and and the thing about it is that comes from our relationship as males with our mothers. Our mothers picked us up for a long time. Some mothers longer than they should.
Yeah.
Some mothers not long enough, but that's usually a pretty rare case. So even as adult males, we still need a pat on the back. I don't care who you are, because mom, not so much dad. Mom used to do it though. And so I think that's ingrained in us. There's no doubt. We all want affirmation. We all want, you're doing all right, kid.
Yeah, we want somebody to give a damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next point. Now we're gonna talk about Tim Perry, the dad. So you put your whistle up. You said you got 4 children, right?
I do.
And you're
4 boys.
4 boys. How'd you get so lucky?
I'm blessed.
We love you, girls, though.
We do.
You have a set of twins that are they 9th or 10th grade now?
They're sophomores.
They're sophomores, and time is flying because I seem like I remember them when they were in like 7th or 8th grade.
You do.
And they are athletes. How do you balance dad versus critic or dad versus coach?
Minimize my coaching them. They at some point your child will stop listening.
Oh, that's a fact.
I shouldn't even say that. It's not that they won't stop listening. It's just your voice is resonates in their ears, and so it all kind of sounds the same. And so it's funny you mentioned that, because I have not coached the twins, Timmy and John, for about 3 years or so.
Wow.
And now I am coaching them again through October. And we have a 2022 team playing through Halloween. And I coached them for the first time last weekend in the longest.
Wow.
And here at our event. And after game 1, we got clapped in the first game. And I take everybody out front. And I'm just not happy. Because when you got energy and effort, it'll drive me the most insane.
Oh, man, you can't teach that.
No.
Hard
and
to.
That will set me off more than anything. If I'm going to curse, that'll be the reason why.
There you go.
And so I was talking, and I'd calm down, because, again, it's just a youth basketball game. The world will keep spinning, right?
True that.
So I take them out front, and I'm explaining things, and then So everybody walks away, and my middle child, Johnny, stops me, and he's like, Dad, look. He goes, I hear you the first time. If you yell at me more than, say the same thing a couple times, he goes, then it just kind of rattles me a little bit. Now, that is part of what we're dealing with now, right? And for me to look at my son, the pride and joy of my life, and say, your feelings are invalidated. Your feelings, how you feel doesn't matter. I'm going to yell at you until I'm done yelling at you, and you're just going to deal with it. You can't go that route, or I can't as a father. I'm hard enough on him the way it is. My son was coming to me with a legitimate concern, a legitimate feeling. He may not like how I responded to it. He didn't know. It took guts for him to come to me with it.
Right.
He wasn't disrespectful about it. So I felt like, as a 16-year-old young man, he needed an answer, and so I gave him one. I said, you need to understand that the first time I'm probably yelling at you, the second time I'm probably yelling at the team, but I know you can take it, and you're my son, so I may use your name twice. The other side of it is, I said, fair enough, I need to work on it. I'm always going to constructive criticize you. I'm always going to push you. I will never embarrass you on the floor. Those days are long gone. I used to do that a lot because I thought that that's what would keep them in line. But then as they got to be like probably 10 years old, maybe 9 or 10, probably my youngest is age now, you could see on their face that when someone you respect and someone you adore and someone you got up on a pedestal that person shouldn't be on,
right.
Talks to you in a way that makes you feel bad about yourself, that's going to be a pretty big ding. And it took me, I'm not going to say I corrected it overnight, but it took me a little while to grasp that concept that embarrassing them is not, it's not good parenting, it's not good coaching. And so, but getting back to his point, I said, I'll work on it. You deserve an answer. I will work on it. But I'm a yeller by nature, so it's going to take time. But they are very, very, very respectful boys.
Yeah, they are. I know them.
And I appreciate that. We get a lot of compliments on whether it's my wife or the boys' mom or whatever. We get a lot of compliments on the boys in general, and they were raised hard. They were raised tough. So was I. But at the end of the day, time will tell. But they're straight A students and they're good kids. They started as freshmen at Piedmont High. What more can I want for them out of this stage of the game?
They're on track.
They're kind to people. They're helpful. They care about their fellow man. That's what I want out of my kids. So, so far, so good. So far, so good.
Now, when you're sitting in the stands and you're watching them compete, and because you're a great basketball mind, I can tell you're a thinker. You know the game. Do you ever find it difficult to sit on your hands or not be strategic while you're watching them play? If you see some things going one way and you think it should go another, how do you handle those inhibitions, so to speak?
I think I'm pretty good. I don't think anybody would disagree if they were asked what kind of dad I am as far as sporting events itself, because the Twins run track for Piedmont too, so it's not like it's just basketball.
Gotcha.
They're at the point now. They still do silly things, on the court that they should know better.
Right.
But anybody, it's funny because I tell them all the time, there are different types of coaches. And one of the types of coaches, and none of the coaches are better than the others per se, but one of the coaches learned everything through a book. I mean, they literally did, or they were a manager, so they were around it every day.
Right.
You'll see a lot of Division I guys were former managers.
Sure.
They didn't play.
Right.
Or they maybe played small college, and then they became, whatever, grad assistants or whatever.
Worked their way up.
You see that a lot at the Division I level.
Sure.
Because just because you're a great player doesn't mean you become a coach. Just because you're a great coach doesn't mean you're a player.
That's right.
Right? So what I say to them, and getting back to that point, the person that learns out of the books or was around practice every day for a long time, learning from great basketball minds, the one thing that they have trouble grasping, I believe, is that anything can happen out there, man. If you haven't played the game, you don't know it.
Don't know that.
And so to flip out over every little thing is totally counterproductive to your child's development. If you're a coach, it's totally counterproductive to your team's development. As a father, you're gonna get nothing out of going down that road. And so you just kind of roll with the punches, right? And you say, hey, look, and at least with I can only speak to my children because they're my children. Sure. I don't have 100 of them. My children will have played enough basketball. They'll be the first ones to come off the floor and be like, yo, daddy, I know that I shouldn't have, or I know that they'll break it down. They'll break the whole game down. They'll remember things I had long forgotten and the game got over 3 minutes ago. You know what I mean? Like the kids know. They know.
I think that's an awesome thing because I think when you know better, you can do better.
Right.
You know,
and learn from it.
Oh, absolutely. And to your book learner compared to experienced players point, that's absolutely right, man. It's like little nuances of the game that you don't even know to look for unless you play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being able
and
to
I've had bosses that learned. I've had bosses that were great players. Yeah. Because I was an assistant my entire college coaching career except for 1 year. And so I've been around. I had all good bosses. I would say that till the day I die. And I had ones that learned out of the books, and I had ones that were great players. And I got something from all of them. Sure. You know, and I had one boss that learned everything out of a book. He won 2 national titles. So you tell me he's not a good coach?
Yeah, what can you say about that?
You know, for example, but there'd be situations, he's one that I think of that comes to mind, where something would happen over the course of the game and he would lose it. He would lose it. And if he had played the game, I don't think it would have had that negative impact on him. He would have let it roll off his back easier. Yeah. Maybe save himself a little stress.
Yeah, you know that. And then you just know that you got to keep that poker face sometimes. Right. You know, and I think it's a cliche, but it's so true. Your team embodies your personality when you're the coach. No,
it's not a cliche; it's reality.
Yeah, and I think that's at every level because I've sort of seen it. You know, you see some demeanor being very, very fiery, and you know, some coaches they go and hunt a technical foul just to sort of invigorate the squad. I don't necessarily do that because I feel like when the general rattles, so do the troops. Right. You know, but hey, what do I know?
No, and I completely agree. And you wouldn't think that when I coach sometimes, but a lot of methods, I have madness to my method and method to my madness. For sure. You know, it works both ways, I think. And, but they will go as you go. I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about our own program here with the Irish. So our teams are called the Oklahoma Irish or the Oklahoma Lady Irish. And I was thinking with the Irish, my coaching staff doesn't know each other extremely well. I mean, they're friendly and they say hello and they cross paths and whatnot. And they don't know each other's names, but I know them each very well.
Each of them, okay.
Right. And so when I look at their team and watch how their team performs, it's a lot like them.
Really?
Sure.
For better or for worse? You know what I mean? I guess
depends on who you ask.
I got you.
I mean, in the sense that if you're a kid that won't respond well to a yeller, you may not want to be on that team. Sure. If you're a kid that's really fiery, you may not want to be on that one team.
I got you.
I also think kids need to be a little adaptive because you're kids. Yeah. You know, you need to
not everything can change for them.
No, the world goes enough around them, right?
I love it. That's a great point, man.
And as it should, because they're only kids once, and
That's
Lord
right.
knows once you become an adult,
you're an adult
it's
forever.
always something.
It's a life sentence.
Yeah, it's a life sentence. That's right.
And I stole that from dear old dad a couple weeks back, man.
Yeah, that's
He dropped the gem on me.
He did.
Now,
it's a life sentence.
I can remember you and I having a conversation. You told me, you may not even remember this, but it was at least a year ago. You were telling me a little bit about your junior college plight whenever you were coaching and some of the characters that you ended up having to deal with. Yeah. And I have this philosophy, and I want you to respond to me, correct me if you think I need to be corrected. I think that based on my experience in junior college as a player during my time, it was rough for me because it was such. I think that everything that I learned as a player from little league all the way up, I sort of had to shift my thinking and operate in the opposite direction once I got to junior college. Meaning, in little league.
You went to Murray State, right?
I went to Murray State. Right. And not just the institution of Murray, but junior college period. I was always taught team ball, we before me, turn down the good shot to get the great shot. Don't worry about, your individual statistics, just as long as the bottom line was what we wanted to be.
Was your father a coach?
He was not. But he was an athlete in his time.
So he was important in your development.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a huge daddy's boy even to this day. That's my main man. But once I got to junior college, I had to be more selfish if I wanted to not only get on the floor there, but have an opportunity for my career to continue past junior
Right.
college. And it was dog eat dog. And everybody had their own individual agenda. And at that time, I frowned upon that because I was always taught that that's not the way to do it. You know what I mean? What would you say to that?
I'd say that that level does have its own pressure. You got 6 months to prove something. You got
Absolutely.
3 months in your freshman year and 3 months in your sophomore year, and that's it, right? And I'm just talking from a basketball standpoint.
Sure.
Academic would be another different conversation.
Right.
Obviously, they have room to improve there as well. They wouldn't be at the JUCO level, and not every kid goes to JUCO level isn't academically qualified. I'm saying that the majority of the kids need work academically, but yeah, it's stressful. It takes a certain person to coach at that level, and the reason I say that is not because of the dynamic of poor student or poor socioeconomic background or whatever you chalk a JUCO kid up to be. I hate labels and putting things on people, but whatever your perception of the junior college level is, it does have come with a certain amount of pressure because I waver a little bit, Coach. I saw a great tweet yesterday, and someone said, please stop telling our kids basketball is the way out of the hood. It's stupid. The chances of them making it to the NBA is next to nothing. Let's talk about schools and things of that nature. I don't disagree with that because I'd like to think at the end of the day I'm an educator at heart. But at the same time, those kids put that pressure on themselves.
They do.
You know, you don't even want to know how many times I stopped a kid from sending his Pell check back to mom. You know,
Ooh,
his
wow.
Pell check that he needs to live on. They would send it home, you know, thinking they were doing right. Things of that nature. So they put their own pressure on themselves. And that's where you're seeing the selfishness. And my earlier point about it takes a certain kind of person, I think because of that stress and because of the pressure that the kids put on themselves to do right and to get you know, out of the neighborhood and to take care of mom and whoever else is important to them in their lives, because they put that amount of stress on, the selfishness kicks in.
For sure.
And so it's kind of like it takes a lot of different kind of people to coach at the NBA level because them dudes are making more money than you do. These kids, in order to get them to play team ball, it takes a lot of work to build that chemistry because a lot of them are coming in, man, I got to do this, man, I got to do this, man, I got to do this, and I'm only going to be here a certain amount of time. And let's say you're in New York City and you're in the middle of Kansas. You know, you would think, okay, I would just have books and basketball because Lord knows in the middle of Kansas, love Kansas.
Right.
There's not much to do.
Sure. And you know somebody
they're
coming
thinking
from,
about what's going on back home.
and
they're thinking about how mom can't pay the light bill.
Right.
And they're thinking about how little brother's getting roughed up in the schoolyard. You know, just because they leave home, just like any of us, whenever we chose what college we went to, our thoughts are never far from home.
No.
They just put a lot more pressure on themselves to move on because they know that's their way out. At least that's the way they think their way out. Now, hopefully, if they have a decent JUCO guy in their life saying, no, son, your AA degree is what's going to get you on.
Sure.
Your bachelor's is what's going to get you on. You know, but there's a lot of clowns at the JUCO level too.
Yeah, the bitter with the sweet. But so you actually added to my perspective. I never looked at it that way. So if I had to sum up your breakdown just then, I guess I'm hearing that not every case of selfishness with junior college players is because he's a prima donna.
No. I would say that I would say the prima donna is the minority.
So it's good. It's pretty scarce.
You'll get that kid. Let's see. 2004. Is that right? No. I apologize. 2007. I had the Big East. Not player of the year, freshman of the year, but he did get freshman of the week a few times in the Big East. And Q was a good kid. There wasn't anything wrong with him. But he was more leaning towards the prima donna level. Because you imagine playing in St. John's and then coming to Great Bend, Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's going to expect some things.
Yeah.
New York City treats St. John's very well. The bright lights, the billboards, the trains. You know, I'll say St. John stuff, the Red Storm, you know, they play at Madison Square Garden. They've got a pretty good gig.
Sure.
You know, but that his situation's unique. Q wanted to play a different position. so he left St. John's.
Mm.
The kids
Just
that
because
are,
of that.
yeah,
Wow.
the kids that are being well, he felt he was undersized for the Big East, so he wanted to play out on the perimeter.
Okay.
Kind of started that trend of those big guys wanting to step out a little bit, at
Mhm.
least in my world.
The hybrids.
But he went on, and he's still playing pro as a two guard. So he made the right decision for himself. He went to Houston as a two guard out of JUCO. But anyway, long story short, but the kid that's selfish is normally because of the pressure that they're putting on themselves.
Awesome. I got a couple more things I want to run at you
Sure.
because you've been super great with your time and I'm enjoying this. But staying in the junior college realm, I always wondered whenever I was playing, I'm like, man, I'm looking around and I'm sort of being judgmental in a way. So, I kind of kick myself for that in hindsight. But I'm looking at some of my teammates who were exhibiting some questionable behavior and some questionable character and things of that sort. And I would look at my coach like, man, why do you keep rolling these types of dudes in here? But then I got to thinking a couple of years after the fact, I'm like, well, the best ones or the total package, the ones who have the, good character mixed with good academics, mixed with being an outstanding athlete, they're covered already. You know what I mean? They're at the bigger schools. So I guess what I'm asking is, when you're coaching at the junior college level, I know you kind of have to take some quote unquote damaged goods, but where do you draw the line between, okay, this I can tolerate, this is too much for me to give this kid a go?
First of all, I think it's always case by case.
Sure.
The 1 year I was a head coach, my one rule was don't do anything that would embarrass your parents, the institution, or the program.
Sure.
Because I think that that's a nice blanket statement.
It is.
If I were to go out and say, okay, you're going to miss X amount of games, you robbed 7-Eleven. If you go out and miss X amount of games because you didn't go to class.
That list of rules
the
never end.
rules would never end. And the kids would be like, oh, man, did I do something bad today? Like, they'll start second guessing themselves when you have too many rules. But you'll put up with quite a bit.
Yeah. Was that rough for you to adapt to?
I'm a different person now than I was even 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it just comes from age, perspective.
Sure.
When I was 22, I would have sold my mother to coach at Duke, for example. Sorry, Mom. It's just a phrase.
You're afraid. Figure speech.
I was very, very, I had tunnel vision. That's probably the best way to say it. When I was coaching JUCO, I was a little older, but still very motivated. You sell your soul when you're a college coach, and that it takes time to get that soul back.
I think the good news is it's not gone totally.
No,
so you can get it back.
Yeah, it'll come back.
It's salvageable. Okay.
And I pause, and it probably makes me look like I'm this scumbag, but you do things that you probably wouldn't normally do, and I'm talking about rules and things like that.
Right. Kind of sacrificing some degree of integrity. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, your morals. Sure, absolutely. At the 2-year level specifically, if you don't feel bad about sending a kid home that wasn't good enough, and you know darn well what their neighborhood's like or what their situation's like,
right?
And that doesn't take a piece out of you, then you need to work on yourself. Maybe need some Jesus or something, a reminder, because these are human beings. These are people that have feelings and goals, and God, we all remember what it was like you could graduate in the hood. You still are excited about your future, possibly whatever that future may be, and we've all been 18 years old, and it's I don't regret anything per se.
Gotcha.
Because the relationships and the impact that I've had on kids over the years outweighs any negative.
For sure.
I look back on my college career, that specific portion of my life, and I have very few regrets. There are kids to this day that I still keep in contact with. And I think that ultimately is the true testament, right? If you pass away tomorrow, God forbid, Coach Daniels, you pass away tomorrow and no one goes to your funeral, what's that say about you?
Didn't leave much of a
right?
mark.
You didn't leave much of a mark. And so, and that's not the be all end all either, but at the same time, it is a reflection of how you lived your life.
For sure.
If your kids aren't at your bedside when you pass away, that's a problem. If none of the kids that you coached ever think twice about you, that's a problem. Now, kids, what they'll do, and you know as well as I do probably at this stage, what they do is they like to bring up the stuff that you'd rather forget, whether it's a little embarrassing or whatever, something you said or
They
did.
catch
right?
your low points.
They'll be 35-year-old man and still bring up something that I did, at that age, right?
Why you bringing up old stuff, man?
Right. Why you got to bring up old stuff? Or my always famous line, I always tell kids all the time, like if they call me out on Facebook or something, like every couple of years some kid will pop up. I'll say that didn't happen.
There you go.
They love that. That makes them laugh.
I don't recollect.
And I know darn well it happened.
For sure.
But that's just my blanket response. I'll be Taekwon. That didn't happen. It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It's done.
Coach, I was right there. I'm like, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, man. End of story.
Yeah. So, it's the relationships. It's seeing the big picture, man.
For sure.
Because if kids don't have sports, if they don't have something in their life to latch onto that keeps them disciplined, keeps them goal-oriented, keeps them motivated, and quite frankly, the reason they get out of bed in their young life,
right?
And you're a part of that, and you're a positive part of that, man, that's something. That is something, isn't it?
It's definitely something worth celebrating, and just like, you know what, I didn't receive a dime, and I don't.
No, I'm enriched
now
as I ever been.
Yeah, I'm enriched on another level though.
People think I run tournaments. I'm a fat cat and whatnot. It costs money to keep the lights on. It costs money to do anything, right? But that's, man, it's very empowering just to be able to do what I do, and not that I'm on a power trip, but when I say empowering, I mean like to be able to help mold a young person in a positive way isn't coach speak. It's not cliche. It's our future, man.
Yeah, they're up next.
And you want these kids to take care of us, you better raise them right.
That's right.
And so it's a big responsibility. But again, this took me years and years to figure out. Yeah, my brother in here, my mother, my father in here, they'd be like, listen, let me tell you something.
About this kid.
Right, this guy talking right now, right?
I don't know him.
They know me, but it's been a journey.
Gotcha.
It's been a journey, and I'm not the only one. I mean, everybody goes through the same stuff.
Sure.
But I just have the luxury and the pleasure of every day of helping kids do something they love. And that's good stuff. It's funny because I was just talking to Landon about, I tweeted out, I had heard that somebody say money doesn't buy happiness. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But after having this conversation, it does kind of reel me back in.
Right.
Financially, I may not ever have the things that I want.
Sure.
But I always have enough.
There you go.
And the important stuff is the dad that texted me the other day and said, hey, my son made the Deer Creek freshman team. If you wouldn't have taken a chance on him 2 years ago, he'd have dumped basketball. How's that not make your day?
Man. And it's that you reached him.
Yep.
You reached him.
Yeah. Powerful stuff, brother.
And that's enough to keep going.
Yeah. I hope so, because for a lot of teachers and educators, it's not.
Sure.
And at some point, I don't blame them, because money is important. Money is important.
It
Twitter,
is important.
okay? For all these that tweeted back at me.
You got to have that money.
But so some teachers just quit. They're tired of it. They move to Texas. In Oklahoma, I see they migrate to Texas a lot.
Big difference.
Big difference in pay scale. And so money does matter.
But
hopefully we all try to hold on to what's important, and that's raising these kids and hopefully raising them right.
Salute to you, my friend, Mr. Perry. It's
Yes,
been
sir.
great for you to sit down and take the time
I feel like
with
I
me.
talked too much.
No, you didn't. And listen, you elaborated on every single question that I asked you. You weren't short.
We didn't talk about Popeyes.
We didn't talk about Popeyes. We didn't talk about
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. And I'm a fan. I'm a big Popeyes fan. So
I just had Popeyes last night. Hand to God. I
Did you?
did.
Now,
I'm
what'd
a
you
huge
have,
fan.
though? You didn't get the chicken sandwich, did you?
No, I didn't get the chicken sandwich. I got the chicken.
See, that's me, because I'm a creature of habit. Three-piece spicy, you know what I mean?
3-piece spicy red beans and rice and green beans.
You see what I'm saying? Every now and again, I'll say, add me another side so I can get the green beans.
I've done that.
That's me, man.
Well, because I'm not walking out of there without the green beans.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
So I can feel good about my choices. At least I got some
Now,
green in me.
real quick, do we got a second, or you need to cut out?
I got class at 1:50, so
That's not a problem. You're going to edit it anyways.
Oh, okay. What you got for me? Bring it on.
Andrew Luck. Support him, don't support him.
Man, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here because I did not get to see his press conference or his retirement speech to say, this is assuming that he actually elaborated on some of the things that led to this decision. But number one, I had to remind myself that he's been in the league for 7 seasons. I don't know why in my mind I was thinking he's only been in the league for maybe 4 or 5.
Right.
So, obviously the quarterback position, they have a lot longer of a lifespan in the NFL.
Okay.
Compared to like a running back position, because theirs is typically under 10. So when I look at it from that lens, I'm like, well, he has spent a chunk of time in the league. He's made a boatload of money. But I think that him being okay financially, even though people may not want to mention this part.
And a Stanford degree.
And a Stanford degree. I think that kind of puts him in a position to be able to step away and do it comfortably. And
quality of life.
Quality of life. And I've never had to, deal with debilitating injuries. So
Me either.
I don't know about that rehabilitation process, physically or mentally.
Perfect. Real quick, my brother's chili is amazing. We're going to cover everything I tweeted about.
Yeah.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No, I don't believe in ghosts. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I haven't seen them. See, seeing is believing for me.
Right. Do you think ghost hunters have a place on this earth?
For entertainment purposes only.
Okay. Millennials. Is it fair to get any blanket statements about millennials in general?
No. Because I don't even know what a millennial is.
I don't either.
Yeah,
younger than me.
Yeah,
That's
you know
all
what? I think somebody said anybody born like 83 on or something crazy like that. See, it was a fine line. So I guess
Andrew Luck is catching some flack about being a millennial. That's a millennial thing to do, to retire at 30 years old or however old he is.
Yeah, but then on the flip side, we joke, or maybe not even joke. We frown upon people overstaying their welcome, and then they pay for it in their quality of life on the back end, physically not being up to par, mentally being off key. So it's like, what do you want? Pick your poison.
Exactly.
This guy's getting out while the getting is good.
Yeah, and a lot of people are applauding that. Be able to lift up your kids and things like that nature.
Yeah.
And then if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound?
No.
There you have it.
No.
My man.
I like how he switched roles. He took over. He took over as the maestro, and I fell right in line.
I gotta run everything.
He gotta run it.
I gotta run everything.
We got leaders, man.